very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
I'm Kaido Kikiolu.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning.
Good morning from Abuja. I'm Maokwe Ogu Yusuf.
Well. The figures from the NCDC, the total confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the country, well, it's, I don't know if it's a shocking, alarming, but look at that, 627. That is the total cases now, with 170 discharged and 21 deaths. Wow, it's reason to that. I know that, but just take a look at that now. Of all of these numbers, you have 86 new cases were reported. Now, this is the highest ever that we've recorded. Remember, initially, on the 1st of April, I had the highest of 35. It tanked to 10 the next day. Then, after a couple of days, we got that figure again, but we recorded it about 3 times. But now, then you had 40-something cases. But this 86 new cases, 70 of them in Lagos. And there's a reason why. Lagos is, now they've begun this community testing.
Yeah.
So they moved into the area. So, and of course, you all know that, when you have a lot more tests, chances are that you will have people who test positive. So, but you have 7 in FCT. Well, FCT is equally carrying out some community testing, but we'll talk about that as we progress. Then, look at that, 3 in Katsina, 3 in Akwa Ibom, 1 in Jigawa. Some of them have their first cases.
Yeah.
Jigawa, then you have one in Bauchi. Bauchi, they've had cases before, but now they've recorded another. Then 1 in Borno. This was as at 11 p.m. on the 19th of April.
So you see the total figures across the states right there. Lagos with 376, FCT with 88, and Kano with 36. And just like Chamberlain said, Borno and Jigawa are the new states on that log. Borno with 1 case and 1 death, apparently. So the case, it was a health worker who was at the hospital and started showing symptoms very late. So they took the sample and turned out positive, and then the person passed on, sadly. And then Jigawa also recorded its first case, and then 1 case was taken from Kano and added to it, so 2 cases. So we have 2 extra states on that log. Just to say that these cases are human beings. They're not numbers, they're people. And if you look at the increase just from Monday last week till Sunday, that's yesterday, we had a total of 304 cases in the space of just about 6-7 days. 304. Now, let me put this in context. We were at that same figure on April the 10th. That's 6 weeks after this whole thing started in Nigeria. So imagine we recorded those same numbers in from just Monday to Sunday. The same cases we recorded in 6 weeks, we recorded in just a week. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to a lot of people, but it just shows where we are right now. 304 cases in just a week, what we recorded in 6 weeks. But, as we like to say, we like to show you, the ray of hope. You see discharged days 170, sadly deaths 21. If you, put that together, the discharged is, about 90% compared to the deaths. So simply put, 1 out of 10 people die as a result of this, while the remaining 9 are discharged. And, if you look at testing, like you said, we've tested over 7,000 people. If you look at the confirmed cases as a percentage of the testing, you see that that's about, between 8 to 10%. So if we increase the testing, maybe we will just see this trend, or maybe not. But just to put this in context, at this point, I know a lot of people woke up to that shocker. Looking at the figures and seeing that we have crossed 600, now 627, it might be shocking for a lot of people. And, this is a time for us to really let things sink in. There are no more figures. These are real people. And I could go on and on. You might wonder, am I trying to scare you? Maybe, maybe not. We don't want to scare anybody here, but we want to push you to take responsibility. That is the big picture here, for us to take responsibility. We'll talk about the figures definitely during the course of the program, but that's where we are right now.
And perhaps to add just one more figure before we go on, a report that the NCDC released last week showed, hitherto what we had heard was that coronavirus disease, that older people are a lot more susceptible to it. But if you look at the figures released, the summary figures that the NCDC promised to give us shows that the demographics of men are about 71% as at Friday, and female about 29%. But the most affected age group, now that's where I got a little shocker. The most affected age group is between 31 and 40, contrary to what we had initially thought, that it's the older people that are a lot more susceptible to it. So that should give you an idea. This thing is no joke. It is better to stay safe. You never really know. One other thing that we've heard about coronavirus is that depending on the environment where you find yourself, the demographics are different in very many countries. It could be this way in the US, that way in the UK, France, Italy, different countries, different demographics. In Nigeria, according to the NCDC, this is what we have. So you never really know when you get on a bus going somewhere out of desperation with someone. You don't know who has coronavirus.
Those are the very active population, in fact.
Yeah, exactly. So please, let's take this very, very seriously. It is not a joke.
And they're not invincible. Okay. It's John.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if people who speak Pidgin or who do not understand English are watching this show. It would really be lovely to get this out in as many languages as possible, to break it down to people. Kayode, the picture which you painted in terms of the figures jumping, shouldn't come as a surprise to many people, because this is how the projection goes. First you get one person, then it goes to 10 people. Before you know what's happening, you have an exponential increase. That's why the NCDC has been reiterating that people need to take responsibility for their health. It is your health at the end of the day. Your health is your wealth, and you have to hold it in your hands. If everybody else is behaving carelessly around you, you cannot afford to be careless with your health, unless, of course, it's of no value to you. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people were disappointed, at the burial of the late chief of staff to the president. A number of things just did not look right. It didn't look like the authorities were observing what it was that they were preaching. They wanted to see a lot more in terms of examples being set at that burial, to tell people, to reiterate to the people the seriousness of this disease. If it could take the president's chief of staff, the highest profile government official so far, nobody is immune to it. And so a lot more people need to take care. We're seeing the figures now. It's so sad now that, Jigawa has now recorded it. Don't forget that there was a huge controversy between Kano and Jigawa in terms of whether there was a case in Jigawa or not, because the Jigawa state government said that case was from Kano. I still do not understand the rationale behind transferring the case to Jigawa because the person was from Jigawa. It didn't make sense to me. However, perhaps because of that, because no matter how careful you are, you never can tell what can happen with that one singular case. There was a danger. Now they have a second case. One of the places where we're praying would not see a case was Borno State, because you cannot add COVID to an area already battered by insurgency. But we sincerely hope that this time around, we will be as vigorous, as aggressive as we can in containing that disease in Borno State, because we cannot afford a spread in such a state. So we have a fire on our hands, guys. And I'm sincerely hoping that our firefighting equipment is as aggressive as we think it is. But in the meantime, we're also asking the populace to join in this firefight, because the figures we're recording now are the figures that other countries are recording as death cases. Let's not forget that. Let's put it in context. I'm hoping that our people will take this seriously enough and ensure that they take responsibility for their health and the health of those around them. Gentlemen.
Oh, yes, indeed. We can't, drive home this point enough, different areas, because, even that of Abuja, about last week, remember when they had that 9 cases after 4 days of not having any case recorded? They began community testing in Abuja at the time. Some of them did also let us know that, there were samples taken from different areas, 270 samples at a point when they had 9 cases. So those areas, they thought, look, this is what they had been trying to avoid, what we're trying to see how we could seriously work against it, community spread. Yeah. So that is what is happening now. That's why you see Lagos having as much as 70, because they're moving it. And then for those that have, for instance, when Abuja had those 9 cases, so they now, of course, naturally, you now have to start contact tracing those 9 people. Where have they been? Who have they contacted? So because they never showed any symptoms.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
so they interacted with people not normally. And now, when NCDC moved into different communities, they then found 9 people had this.
And that's a concern. I mean, we're wondering what we will find when we really keep doing this the more. I mean, if we try to, because we're learning from other countries at this point. So let's imagine a country that has a similar population to Nigeria. Maybe not the same. The US, for example, over 300 million population. Nigeria is over 200. So maybe that's a fair, comparison.
Yeah, it's not West Africa.
Exactly.
West Africa
But you see that New York is the epicenter in the United States, just like Lagos in quote is the epicenter for us here in Nigeria. New York has over 200,000 cases at this point. By the way, New York's population is less than 10 million. Lagos population is 20 million. So if New York has over 200,000 cases, over 18,000 deaths, and that's just in the space of, January up till this moment. You imagine what the projections will be for Lagos. At this point, we're still at about 376 in Lagos. Yeah. We don't want to get to 200,000 cases. So yet again, this is a time for us to keep telling ourselves, take responsibility. What does it mean? Social distancing, physical distancing, personal hygiene, just making sure that you take responsibility for what you do. Don't spread it to someone. That's in case you have, but basically just ensure that you stay at arm's length, you wash your hands, you don't go out when you're not meant to. I could go on, but I think we understand.
And
these
as
things.
much as possible, stay at home. If you don't have to go anywhere, just stay at home. I had a document read up over the weekend, and I found out that from the example of the 1918, 1919, the same thing happened. People who didn't have any symptoms moved in the name of running away from this infection, moved away from the urban centers to the villages, infected the people in the villages. And it's the same thing that is happening now, causing this, what we call it, the community spread, so community transmission. So in the name of love for the people that you love, stay away from them, especially if you are from the urban centers, because it is really, really serious. Today, these are the figures that we have now. Who knows what figures are going to come up tomorrow? I mean, look at the sequence. Over the past 3-4 days, 48, 51, 70, 86. I mean, it's really scary.
Well,
I don't know.
And speaking about which, talking about staying at home, already many are looking to see, are we going to vary this staying at home? The Plateau State governor talking about this the other day, how he's managing the lockdown. And so it's going to be a huge challenge. We'll see how they go about all of this. I know they keep comparing the lockdown in the country to other countries. Look, it's on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
We can't exactly, even though some other African countries, they lifted the lockdown, but the borders remain closed, no public gatherings. So they're still observing social distancing, still using face masks and producing them. So some of those things we're doing. So for the authorities now, what kind of consideration, what things will they consider? Because now that the figures are spiking, who's going to expect them to lift the lockdown? Honestly. Will they lift the lockdown? If they will, how will they lift the lockdown? What kind of measures will we put in place to lift the lockdown?
Those measures must include those palliatives and in details as well, because you can't, we advocate that people should stay at home, but people are hungry. I don't know how many people have had experiences where people are knocking on your door, asking you for one thing or another. I've had a plethora of news, and I'm sure some of us watching this as well would say the same thing. You tell people stay at home, and the next thing you're seeing on WhatsApp is, but people are hungry.
Well, people will always be hungry. So, but it's up to the authorities now to see what are they going to do differently compared to how things change. Because as these figures change, the strategies are changing. So the lockdown may even be extended. It may be reviewed. We don't know how government or what government is thinking, but they'll rely on statistics and figures, advice from the experts, the professionals who are out there. And I wonder if Lagos is going to revise their worst-case scenario stance as a result of some of these figures that they've seen now. Who knows?
Well, the Commissioner of Health was speaking about that, and he tried to, give comparisons. By the way, across Africa, maybe let's compare also, you see Ghana with over 1,000 cases. Ghana's population is 29 million, just a little above Lagos at this point. And you see South Africa, which has the highest in Africa, has 37,000 cases. Oh, I take that back, 3,000 cases. not 37. The population is 57 million, but 3,000 cases. So we see the trend in Africa. Are we doing as much tests as even Ghana?
That is it, because they've done how many? 60?
Way more than we have done.
Something thousand.
Definitely.
tests.
Are we doing as much tests as South Africa? Definitely not. And you see the cases they have recorded. So this is where we are right now, and we are the ones that can get ourselves out of this. And it's important to say, I mean, we're reaping the fruit of what happened maybe 2 weeks ago. So this is not a time to probably say the lockdown is not effective, because, I mean, this is reaping some of the things that we didn't do right maybe 2 weeks ago. So we can only see the effect of this lockdown maybe in 2 weeks' time. So it's important for us to not drop the ball. That's like the catchphrase at this point. Don't let's drop the ball.
But the lessons for today is that, or from these figures, the person who you saw yesterday, who is exhibiting no symptoms whatsoever, just might be positive. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That is the stark reality of our time now. And who knows, we can't even begin to talk about flattening the curve now that this whole thing is just trying to peak. So when will it peak? How long? So, but these are some of the considerations, even though, yes, I did move around the city over the weekend. Goodness me, some areas you never would even think that there's any such thing.
Absolutely.
As people observing all of these things. But the authorities will have to keep putting all hands together to see how we can make some of these things happen. We'll come back and take a look at just a few of those dailies and see what they are talking about today. Mark, let's take you through some of the dailies. Vanguard for a start. No law against release of COVID-19 corpses, ascribed to the Lagos state government, and this is the fallout of what they saw over the weekend. Look at the riders. 83-year-old woman dies in Lagos, 4 discharged. Ogun confirms 2 new cases, or your discharges 2. So that is what you see on the front page here as well. Tension grips FCT residents as 12 more tests positive. So there you go. It's wow, the new realities now as a result of all of these figures. So it's going to give them a lot of headache in terms of what do they do. The NCDC bosses did move around some states, wondering how come no cases here? Are we doing enough? Just be sure that you're really doing enough, because I think it's speaking from experience, having moved into communities with community testing, saying that there are people who actually have it, but they're in the community who didn't come on or didn't reach out to all of them. And then you also see herdsmen abduct Anglican priest's wife, children in Delta. I think at this time, oh boy, I mean, whatever time, shouldn't even be. So, bandits raid Katsina village, kill 47. This is ascribed to police. And let's take a look at this on the back page. Vanguard Sports. Why Okagbere's marriage crashed. They say details inside. Yobo, Keshi prepared me for leadership. Well, they have several others. That's Vanguard this morning.
Let's take a look at the Nigerian Tribune. Big story. Abba Kyari. Why officials at burial cannot enter Aso Rock now. It's parenthesis. Who said that? You find out in the pages of the paper. And you see this one coming from the NCDC on how to handle COVID-19 corpses. And there's another story. The Kyari not known. And this is coming from his associates, pages 3 and 4 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. That's sad one from Katsina. Bandits kill 47 in Katsina. It's on page 29. And right under that big picture, which I'll come to very soon. I mean, we want to end this review on a light note, on a hope note. But see this one, WHO official tests positive in Bauchi. Lagos discharges 4, Oyo 2. Katsina on lockdown, curfew in Edo. By the way, that's the same Katsina that bandits attacked. Lagos mainland, Etiosa, Ikeja, top local governments with highest cases. That's credited to the health commissioner. You see, there's a breakdown that Lagos State has released just to let people know what local governments have, what figures. But let's just take this one, the big story, the big picture on the front page, actually. It shows, 2 parents with 2 children, 2 babies, actually. And right next to that, you see, Luth delivers 68-year-old woman of twins. I mean, this is the kind of thing we want to hear at this time, really. I saw the story yesterday, and I was really happy because, I mean, I had the figures of NCDC on one hand across the country, and I had this story. Congratulations, really. Luth delivers 68-year-old woman of twins. We'll leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
And the Leadership newspaper also opens, front page of the Leadership newspaper this morning has a story about Abba Kyari. More tributes for Abba Kyari as UN, governors, IBB, console PMB. It has a number of riders there. Nigeria has lost a great administrator, says Obaseki and Etsunope. Presidency asks officials, journalists at burial to proceed on 14-day isolation, among other riders that you see right there on the front page of the Leadership newspaper this morning. Right beside the picture you see on the front page, PMB condemns killing of 47 by bandits in Katsina. Well, I don't know what the authorities are going to do about that. It was a challenge before COVID-19, and even now, perhaps more so. Right under the picture and the other stories, Rivers government releases arrested 27 ExxonMobil workers. You find out, of course, you know the ripple effect of what happened as a result of that. Well, what should have happened is no longer going to happen because of this release. And that story about the twins delivered, 68-year-old woman delivered of twins in Lagos. And COVID-19, panic in Maiduguri over alleged death of nurse. That's one of the stories that you mentioned to you earlier. Find out the details on the inside pages of the Leadership newspaper. That's the Leadership newspaper this morning.
Okay, there you go. That is it. We'll look at some of the dailies, I believe. All right, so we'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.